But the work you're doing, right, like empowering communities to speak up is super important.
Well, hey, everyone, and welcome back to the America First Energy podcast. I'm Skyler Zunk, your host. Today's conversation is a different one, but one that we're super excited about. As our listeners know, a lot of our work here in Virginia and Louisiana focuses really uniquely on the local government, educating folks at the community level on the benefits and facts surrounding clean energy developments, working to get good policies in place so landowners can exercise their property rights and utilize their land for a solar storage project as they see fit. Our team routinely works in 70 Virginia counties and a growing number of parishes in Louisiana on this work. And our work is just solely focused on that local government that's closest to the people and matters a whole lot getting energy deployed and permitted at that local level. I'm joined today by the president of the Solar Energy Industries Association, Ms. Abby Hopper, to talk a little bit about a section of the industry that we don't talk a lot about, what's going on in Washington, D.C. Abby, you and I share a similar background a little bit. Maybe I'm stretching too far there, but I first got my start at the Department of the Interior, learning about energy projects all across the country. It's where I first whet my appetite with energy development. I got to see the inside of the Hoover Dam.
Yeah.
I got to tour a solar project in development in the desert surrounding Las Vegas. I got to tour oil fields, see all of these different sorts of energy projects that matter a lot to folks at the Department of the Interior. But after you were the director of the Bureau of Offshore Energy Management, you joined the Solar Energy Industry Association as its leader, representing hundreds of thousands of jobs, billions of dollars in investments at the federal level. Tell us a little bit about your work. Tell us what that work has looked like for the past 6 months as the Trump administration has started out again.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's really an honor to be here in Virginia today. And I too, when I went to the Department of Interior, I had worked in energy, but I'd worked at the state level, right? And when you're in a state, it feels like the state is the center of the universe. And then you go to the federal level and you realize, holy cow, there's so much happening across the country. And then if you have the opportunity to like go abroad, you realize that we're just a tiny piece of the puzzle. But I too went offshore on, because my agency, a lot of people think I was just the offshore wind lady, which I was. But like 80% of my portfolio was oil and gas. And so I went offshore to drilling rigs and to production vessels. And I feel like people like you and I who have seen the breadth of the energy infrastructure, right? Not just like one technology, actually have a much more sophisticated understanding of not only how technologies work, but how energy markets work, right? And it's way too simplistic to be like, well, let's just get rid of one particular kind of energy. Like there have been, hundreds of millions of dollars invested in building the infrastructure and then all of the technology, regardless of the energy source, so much technology into production methods. So that's like where I come from, is sort of a deep understanding and appreciation for what has come before. So my organization, as you said, is the National Trade Association. So we have about 1,300 members, like all across the energy, the solar spectrum. So the residential sector, commercial, community, utility scale, all across the ecosystem. We have a ton of manufacturers, developers, financiers, the person that like deals with the bees, right? And all those people are in my membership, publicly traded companies, like 2-person proprietorships, like they're all welcome and they're all included in SEIA. What's the last 6 months been like? Is that what you're gonna? That was actually your question.
I ran into you just outside of the West Wing in
That's right.
Eisenhower building probably 6 months ago, and had the chance just to say hi. I know you were there for much more important meetings than I was there for. But what's it been like? Because I know it's been tough. I know on SEIA's wish list for the One Big Beautiful Bill, there were a couple shortcomings there with phasing out of the investment tax credits that solar projects, clean energy projects have historically relied on. How would you characterize the past 6 months?
Yeah. The past 6 months, it was good to see you that day. I've learned, pro tip, like if you're taking your company CEOs to the White House and they've never been, take them to the gift shop after the meeting.
I
It's like such, yeah, totally. They were like, literally kids at a candy store. It has been a wild 6 months. Wild in that there's been so much change, and so much that seemed settled has become unsettled, right? And things we thought were true have been like upended. So interestingly, all of us were really prepared for it, like the one big beautiful bill, right? Like we knew that was coming. Everyone knew that sort of whether the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, was going to be repealed or what was going to change. Like that was well within the grounds of the knowable and anticipated, and we were ready. And I actually think, we had a lot of conversations with Republicans and really thoughtful discussions. And actually, where we ended up at the end of that, I think it's very manageable for the industry. Like we can deal with it. Is it exactly what we wanted? Of course not.
Yeah.
But it's not a full repeal of the IRA. So that part, like, was sort of in the realm of the knowable. The regulatory onslaught that has followed, right? The sort of 3 days after the signing of the big beautiful bill, the executive order that threatened to change kind of the regulatory constructs we operate under, that felt very undermining. And so I think that's a lot of what our industry is reacting to, is sort of the norms are up for grabs.
Yeah.
That's hard to plan a
Yeah.
business when the norms are up for grabs.
Having that certainty, I know, is very helpful to your members now.
Yeah.
Even at the local level, I'll be frank, we've gotten some pushback because folks see solar as only workable, only profitable if it has that investment tax credit or the federal subsidy.
Mm-hmm.
And we've spent our breath telling folks that it's the cheapest form of energy per megawatt that can be delivered at the utility scale. It's affordable. Solar's really grown up over the past 10
Oh
years.
my gosh, it
And
has.
I think folks are starting to realize that solar projects don't necessarily need to have those investment tax credits in order to be proposed, be built, be financed, and be profitable.
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing folks move past that. I think you alluded to that a little bit.
Yeah.
One thing that you said during your remarks here earlier at the Virginia Clean Energy Summit is that you think these next 3 years essentially are going to mature the industry quite a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
That really resonated with me, and I want to share with you why. But what do you think that maturity looks like?
Yeah.
Solar industry, storage industry achieving over the next
Yeah.
few years?
Well, as your viewers know, like the investment tax credit will end at the end of 2027, and projects that start after July of next year have to be in service by then, right? And so it really, companies are pivoting. Like that's sort of the word I've landed on, is pivot, right? They're having to evolve. Maybe that's another good word. Evolve their business models, evolve their cost structures, evolve their financing mechanisms, evolve their products to their, like, what they're offering to sort of meet this new reality. And I'm glad we have a couple of years to do that. It's not, that was part of our frustration with the residential sector, who there's just an abrupt end to that tax credit that ends at the end of the year. Those companies didn't have a lot of time to pivot or evolve, right?
Yeah.
That's not, in my opinion, it's not really fair to entrepreneurs, right? But having a multi-year transition period, I think, is fair. And that's what I hear from companies, is like they are thinking about, what does my customer want? Who is my customer? What does my customer want? How can I provide that given this new reality of financing? Where can I cut costs in different ways, maybe? And I think that we're going to remain intensely competitive because companies will evolve and mature and do that.
Then you have that technological advancement on your side. Panels are getting more efficient. We're getting cheaper.
And storage is too.
As well as
Right.
storage,
Yeah.
which we're seeing a large tick up for here in Virginia. I want to go deeper into that maturity as an industry, as trade associations that serve it. I'm sure you saw natural gas, oil trade associations during your time at Interior, working to drill offshore, extract energy from the earth, offshore and onshore. I mean, those companies have been around for 100 years. Maybe more. Traditional energy, fossil fuel energy sources have had that chance to mature over many decades, dozens of presidencies, dozens of administrations and Congresses. When do you think the solar industry is going to get there? And I'll qualify that with a story. I had the chance to attend the New Mexico Oil and Gas Association
Mhm.
annual meeting once.
Yeah.
And the Democrat governor of New Mexico,
Uh-huh.
Governor Grisham,
Uh-huh.
got a rousing applause.
Uh-huh.
She understood the need for fossil fuels in her state. My boss, the Secretary of the Interior, kind of got a similar applause.
Uh-huh.
But it just goes to show in my mind that the oil and gas industry has sufficiently lobbied both sides of the aisle. They
Yeah.
know their audiences. They are deeply entrenched, have certainly a lot more resources probably
Mhm.
than the clean energy industry has. But do you think there's a way for national trades, state trade associations to be working constructively with both Republicans and Democrats? Because it's a really good thing when both the left and the right are fighting for your goals. And
Yeah.
API has been very successful in that
Mhm.
over many decades.
Mhm.
Do you see us getting there where we can have
Yeah.
Republicans in the House and the Senate nationally coming to the table, celebrating their solar energy investments in their states and districts? Do you think we can get
Yeah.
there?
No, absolutely. And I think to do anything else would be both foolish and unsuccessful. So we have a PAC at SEIA, a federal PAC. We give and have historically given about 50-50 to Republicans and Democrats. Um, even so, sort of regardless of who's in power, like we try to keep that balance so we can avoid some of that partisanship that you hear. One of the things though that really differentiates us, and I think is an opportunity for us to mature as an industry, is to really build that muscle of political giving and political engagement into our DNA, right? I don't know if that's muscles and DNA,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Oil and gas is really good at supporting their friends and building relationships and maintaining them over long periods of time, right? They have people at the local level and the state level and the federal level. We have not had the kind of resources that have allowed us to build that kind of infrastructure. And so we tend to come when we have a situation, like when we have a problem or an ask. Mature industries are steady presence. And that's,
Yeah.
that is like my real goal is that the clean energy industry, that that politicians would be afraid to say no to us. Like that's when I know we'll have achieved real political power, is when, on the positive side, everyone wants to vote for us. On the like more sort of edgy political side, people
Yeah.
are afraid to say no to us, right?
Yeah.
There's a political cost.
And part of this is a messaging battle, which we're deeply engaged in. But some of the
sure.
biggest supporters of clean energy investments at the local level
Uh-huh.
are your ruby red Trump MAGA Republicans
Yep.
who love their property, love living in
Love it.
rural areas, know their property better than anybody,
Mhm.
want to diversify their income with a
Mhm.
new form of farming, a new form of land use.
Mhm.
And I feel I'm saying this to our organization, and I'm sure you feel a similar way. We need to contextualize that. We need to let folks know who the actual beneficiaries of a lot of these
Right.
projects are.
Right.
Certainly, there are power companies, there are energy companies that stand to make a profit as businesses should when these projects go through.
Mhm.
But it's also helping corners of the economy. Certainly here in Virginia, where we have not extracted energy from our natural resources really since the coal days
Yeah.
in Southwest Virginia.
Yeah.
But now we're seeing
Yeah.
counties coming to that energy conversation for the very first time, creating new electrons.
Right.
It's a story we need to tell.
Yeah. So I was at a dinner last night, and there's a reporter there, and she asked, we were talking about this challenge of local county councils or town councils, like just saying no. We are not going to approve this solar project. And she said, well, what's your plan to change their minds? And I said, like, my plan is that anyone with the name solar in their job title is never the ones providing the message, right? It is the landowners and the farmers and the local mayors who are saying, no, this is good for our community. I think that's an area where we can do a lot better, is like, nobody wants Abby Hopper flying in from Washington, D.C. to talk to some locals about, like, this is what you should do, or this is why your concerns don't really matter, or like, that's cute that you think that, but it's not true. That is highly ineffective. But the work you're doing, right, like empowering communities to speak up, is super important. So, like, as I think about, people ask me a lot, like, okay, well, what are the next 3 years going to look like, right? We know that President Trump will be our president for the next 3.5 years. What does that look like? And I think it looks like people other than solar developers talking about the benefits of solar, really personalizing exactly what you're saying.
Couldn't agree more. I think there's absolutely still a big role for national federal trade associations to get engaged, talk with folks, do what they do best,
Mm-hmm.
lobbying folks in the
Mm-hmm.
administration and in Congress. What's something constructive that SEIA is currently working on in partnership with the White House and with the Trump administration?
Yeah.
Is there anything that you can point to or anything on your wish list that you'd like to accomplish with the energies of the Trump
Yeah.
administration over the
Yeah.
next few
I mean, I
years?
think there is a ton of energy about permitting reform, right? And so this is an area where differentiating, I think it's important to differentiate between the business community and maybe the environmental community, right? So I represent the business community. We are fairly agnostic about what other technologies need in their permitting reform, right? Like, so we would be happy for Congress to make a deal around permitting reform that includes transmission and pipelines, right? That includes sort of what fossil fuel needs and what clean energy technologies need, right? I think that is, and we're not the only ones, it's not just us, but like there's so many things that building out energy infrastructure require that are not technology specific, right? That I think is a real opportunity and certainly something that I think is consistent with the president's like getting rid of red tape, getting rid of uncertainty.
So is the federal permitting reform mostly focused on essentially transmission or clean energy assets on federal land? It really wouldn't touch the local and state permitting apparatuses to get these projects
It
the
doesn't
permits to go.
touch it necessarily, no, but it's mostly like, yes, that sort of bigger, like the areas where the Department of Interior or EPA has permitting authority and siting authority. That would be where it would be most impactful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
understood. One thing we're certainly proud of is the increased onshoring of solar panel manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you know one of my favorite companies is First Solar that
Mm-hmm.
has continued to invest billions of dollars in domestic manufacturing with a new site coming on in Louisiana,
Yeah.
in Alabama. They've got a site up in operation, and
Yeah.
their home base is two sites up in
Ohio.
Ohio. And President Trump put tariffs on solar panels during his first administration. President Biden kept those in,
Mm-hmm.
and that's really spurred on a lot of that domestic investment. How do you all see that? I'm sure that's important to your members, both
Yeah.
balancing members that might import more than they
Yeah.
purchase
Yeah.
domestically, but it's an all-around great story. Are
Yeah.
there any areas um, for improvement, for more domestic manufacturing that you can potentially
Yeah.
point to?
So it's been a high priority for SEIA for many years to onshore domestic manufacturing, and so in the Inflation Reduction Act there were incentives for domestic production, which remained throughout the Big Beautiful Bill, and sort of adders like additional opportunity if you bought domestic content, and that remained through the Big Beautiful Bill because it makes sense. Like it is incenting companies to both buy the product and invest in building the product here. And so we have gone from being number 14 in the world in manufacturing to number 3 in the world. Ohio is the number 1 state actually for solar manufacturing, and it has certainly been modules. We can now supply 100% of our modules from domestic manufacturing, and then as you work up the supply chain, right, we have more work to do there, but also like inverter manufacturing and tracker manufacturing and racking manufacturing, all of this other balance of system that is happening here in the United States. Like we're in the middle of this incredible success story, and I find that super exciting. I think the next area that we'll see a lot of opportunity and growth is in battery manufacturing. Right, the tariffs have played a huge role, particularly on the batteries. We didn't see a ton of domestic manufacturing with just tariffs. It was tariffs plus the investments that Congress made that really moved the market.
I heard Secretary Wright, or Federal Secretary of the Energy Department, speak about 2 weeks ago. And he's an interesting guy. I think has enlightened thoughts on energy generally. Of course, focused in my attention on what he's saying about renewables and their place. I wonder if you've met with him, if you've found any of the Energy Department's work to be constructive so far. He's criticizing solar energy specifically in a few ways, saying that the in 50 years, I think he made the bet that we'll do less than 10% of our national energy will come from solar. It'll be a really small piece of the puzzle. Meanwhile, solar capacity doubled in the first Trump administration,
Right.
and it's the fastest growing sector of new energy added to the grid every single year. I
Right.
think that's going to continue
Yeah.
for the next 3 years as well. And he also makes this case that we need to have two separate grids in order to host renewable projects that are, by their nature, lower capacity factors, intermittent sources. When they do produce a lot, and they produce extraordinarily cheaply. What's SEIA's position in kind of response to those critiques, and
Yeah.
how do you think he specifically can help in this conversation?
Yeah. So I have not met with Secretary Wright yet, not for lack of trying. But I will say his focus and this administration's focus on costs, like affordability, reliability, and safety of the grid is exactly what we should be talking about, right? Like those are the things that are best for our nation and best for consumers. So I have no issue. Like I think he is focused on the right things. And I think, it's challenging us as a solar industry, as the storage industry, as clean energy to really make sure that we can prove that we can deliver in all of these ways. I think we can, and
Yeah.
I think we can prove it. But we're certainly have to sharpen our message, right? And like get that across. I think batteries, like it is true that the sun does not shine at night. Like that's just a fact. I don't personally call that intermittent. It's a feature of the technology, right? The wind doesn't blow all the time. It's a feature of the technology. Nuke plants have to get refueled. That's a feature of the technology, right? Like natural gas plants, like if you don't insulate the pipelines, they freeze up in cold weather. That's just that, like all of these are facts. And so rather than sort of seeing them as like cudgels to hit the technology with, like they're just part of this integrated system. And so making sure we have both the software and the storage to like modulate the grid and make sure that we always have the supply we need, I think that's really important. So I said it from the stage, storage as the piece that brings all those together, right? And being completely like technology agnostic.
Sure.
Battery doesn't care where the electron comes from.
Yeah.
That to me is the game changer, right? If the secretary's point is that whatever technology will be a lesser amount because we've had these technological innovations, that's totally cool. I would never bet against innovation, but if it's because like solar's not reliable, then I would disagree with him on that.
Yeah. I mean, we're an all of the above energy organization, and we mean it. We don't say anything bad about any form
Yeah.
of generation. Every new electron capacity added to the grid's a good one, and we
And it's
desperately need
needed.
it.
Yeah.
In states like Virginia, that imports more energy than any other state at this point.
Wow.
And I appreciated President Trump's focus on energy during the campaign. I think he did it very wisely, focusing on that permitting reform, on getting energy as cheap as possible.
Yeah.
I hope that clean energies, can be discussed in Washington and during his administration in a constructive way that is ready to invest billions upon billions of dollars into new development.
Right.
We might not see these advanced nuclear sites come on in mass during his administration. I think it'd be a mistake to ignore what's right there, and appreciate you for continuing to focus on that with our federal leaders.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be voices like yours, your organization, that need to be present in those conversations, right? Like we need voices of different political ideologies and voices from different communities and voices like representing different technologies. I feel like most technologies, like sometimes it feels like a manufactured fight between technologies, right? Like I think we all see the market is growing rapidly, and as you said, every electron is a good one.
Yeah. We need everybody to
Yeah, exactly. I am like advanced nuclear reactors sound amazing, but as you said, they have a couple more steps in the process, right? Natural gas, you can't get the parts to build it.
5 years.
Right. And so there's an opportunity. I want our country to prosper, right? That's really my goal. Not a particular source of electricity, but our nation to prosper and win, and sort of win the technology race, win the AI race, beat our adversaries. This is not like a choice without winners and losers, right? And it's not a technology that's a winner and loser. It's really the U.S. versus others, and I choose the U.S.
Abby, thank you for your time today. We ask every one of our guests one simple question to close things
What
out.
is that?
Sorry to spring it on you,
Okay.
but if you could have dinner with anybody in the world, alive or having passed, who would it be and why?
That's such an interesting question. So I'm not going to pick a political because that's like where I live my life. So as you may know, I love Dunkin' Donuts coffee. Only decaf. I don't drink caffeine. Um, but I've read the biography of the person who founded Dunkin' Donuts
Okay.
because I think it's an incredibly innovative product. I don't know if, I mean, I probably had a donut when I was little from Dunkin' Donuts, but I just go for the coffee every day, every day. And they have the best marketing. I don't know if you're aware of this, but they have the best marketing.
Okay.
I would love to have dinner with whomever is in charge of what I think is brilliant marketing because the longer I'm on this earth, the more I believe that the stories we tell each other and the stories we tell ourselves are really what create our reality. Like what you're doing is telling stories, right? What I do is tell stories. We call it politics or we call it lobbying or we call it grassroots advocacy, but it's stories. And so marketing is just a different version of telling a story. So I'm super interested. I'd love to meet that person.
Well, Duncan came on the radar 4 years ago during Youngkin's campaign. Virginia runs on Youngkin instead of
I love
runs on
it.
Duncan.
I love it.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Abby Hopper of Solar Energy Industries Association, thank you so much for joining the American First Energy podcast, and thanks for your work.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for your work.
Thank you. Well, hey everyone, welcome back to the America First Energy podcast. I'm joined here with Ben following that excellent conversation that we had with Abby Hopper, the president and CEO of the Solar Energy Industries Association at the Virginia Clean Energy Summit earlier this month in October. Very grateful for Abby for taking the time to sit down with us and talking about all the work that she and her colleagues and her member companies are doing up in Washington to help represent clean energy development in this new era of the Trump administration. I mean, I do remain very optimistic that we can drastically increase the amount of solar and storage we have on the grid during Trump 2.0. Folks will remember, and mentioned it in the interview, that we doubled the amount of solar capacity here in America during President Trump's first term. And his all of the above, all American energy dominance agenda, I think, has to absolutely include solar, and we're seeing projects come at a quickened pace all across the country. So thank you again, Abby. Looking forward to many, many more conversations and a partnership with SEIA as they engage on many of these important conversations in our nation's capital, in Washington, D.C., and beyond. Ben, we'll digest a bit of a news story. I'll toss it to you to introduce it.
Yeah, Skyler, great conversation, of course, with Abby, and as many of our audience members will recall us saying, the solution to our energy problems here in the country is not just about getting new supply on the grid, which is, of course, important, but it's also about upgrading the grid and ensuring that we have a way to move that energy from one place to another. A great article coming out of the federal government this week where the Department of Energy announced the approval of a $1.6 billion loan guarantee for 5,000 miles of transmission upgrades throughout numerous states in the Midwest, a couple of them being Michigan, Oklahoma, West Virginia, Indiana, and Ohio. This infrastructure investment is, obviously going to ensure that energy is being able to be moved where it's needed most. And that's key to ensuring that we are energy secure, that we are energy dominant, and that costs for consumers, whether you're a big business or a residential homeowner, that your energy is cost effective and reliable. But Skyler, break it down a little bit more. Tell us why this matters so much in this current moment.
Well, this is huge, and this is an area that the federal government can come in and be super helpful. This $1.6 billion loan guarantee for transmission projects covers transmission upgrades in American Electric Power Company territory in 5 states: Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Oklahoma, and West Virginia. The article does a great job pointing out that so much of the transmission infrastructure across our country. It was built before Ronald Reagan was president back in the 60s and 70s. And a huge percentage of our transmission infrastructure is quite old, over 25 years, nearing the end of its useful life before those lines need to be replaced and or upgraded. So the nation's transmission infrastructure was built for a bygone era. I mean, think about these line upgrades in the Midwest. They were large lines to help power factories, to help power manufacturing. And we've seen so much growth in population and other energy intensive uses. Of course, data centers being a part of this throughout the Midwest and in the South. It's time for these to be upgraded. And this is a unique area where the federal government could come in and not necessarily fund anything, but come in as a loan guarantor and help the power companies, the transmission companies that own these transmission lines, invest in these upgrades while they get a secure loan secured by the federal government. So I think it's overwhelmingly positive. These folks in these states are going to see increased reliability, increased effectiveness in the transmission of this energy. For every mile of transmission, you lose a little bit of that power. It's not a 100% transmission. So if we have upgraded infrastructure, upgraded grid technology, with grid enhancing technology as well, it's an overall good story. So that energy that we focus so much on generating is delivered more efficiently, more effectively at a cheaper long-term cost.
Yeah, and one thing that's important to note, about transmission, and we've noted this in the past, it's easy for us to, for communities to not be super big fans of large transmission lines moving energy. But the reality is that our communities and our local economies are intertwined and connected, and businesses that generate jobs in one community require power, and those people that work in those factories or those manufacturing plants, they may live in another community, and having energy for those large job makers, those people that bring those businesses that bring economic revenue, is extremely important to the communities that are supporting transmission lines or supporting the manufacturing facilities. And it's important that we, like you say, upgrade our old transmission lines, particularly, of course, as we talked a lot this summer about here in the PJM territory, the potential for load shedding events. And of course, related to that is the ability to move energy where it's needed, when it's needed. But we are about to enter into a winter where in the Northeast and across the Midwest, we're going to see a lot of cold temperatures, a lot of snow. And in the past, that has caused outages due to, old grid technology, old distribution and transmission lines. And so by upgrading and committing to upgrading these lines, of course, the Department of Energy and the administration is really signaling not just support for new business, but support for consumers and people who want to make sure their lights come on, whether it's cold or hot outside or, middle of the summer, middle of the winter. These types of investments, smart investments, like you said, that leverage private capital with the support of the government, that type of smart investment ensures that we can have a reliable grid regardless of what season we're entering.
Yeah, it's absolutely important, Ben. And this is the first loan that has been finalized under the Energy Dominance Financing Program that was set into law by the One Big Beautiful Bill Act earlier this summer. So certainly hope to see more of these guarantees that really just help the private sector take on these incredibly intensely capital intensive upgrades all across the country. Some of these transmission lines will be in the PJM corridor, where we're currently located here in Virginia, Ohio, West Virginia being included in that. And that's certainly going to help with a lot of the peak load that we see every super hot summer or every super cold winter, to make sure that we can transmit energy from where it's a little bit more abundant to where it's a little bit more scarce. And I was really pleased to see the administration tie this back to AI dominance and competing, internationally with China. We absolutely have to have these powerful transmission lines, number one, upgraded, number two, more of them. And it's not the easiest thing to support. I mean, we think building energy generation projects is difficult. It's much more difficult to permit transmission lines that cross state boundaries, that cross county lines, and require so many approvals from local governments and folks at the national level as well. So we need to see the yes in my backyard approach to this, because if we don't have these transmission lines in tip-top shape, we're going to be in a tough situation. I mean, Virginia's importing 40% of its energy on a day-to-day basis, largely from West Virginia, thanks to big transmission lines that can help bring power from their power plants into Virginia, for example, where that power is desperately needed. So I was pleased to see this, and definitely hope to see more of it, unlocking new generation with this new transmission as well.
That's right. Yeah, we need more of this modernizing investment that supports not just our energy reliability and economic competitiveness, but overall our national security as we work to continue to be energy dominant here in America. But Skyler, great chatting with you today. Great conversation with Abby there as well. Look forward to the next one.
Thanks, Ben.